Adelaide Pierce kicked the stagecoach door open before the wheels had stopped turning and hit the Texas mud running. Her silk slipper tore. She didn't slow. Behind her, the driver was shouting her name, the wrong name, the forged name on her ticket, and her lungs were burning and the leather satchel against her ribs was still warm with her father's blood. She made it 10 steps before her knees gave out. The ledger spilled from her arms. Bloody fingerprints marked every page. And then a shadow fell across her, and a low voice said, "Ma'am, you're bleeding." Before we go any further into Adelaide's story, if you believe a woman can outrun the devil himself when she's got the right man waiting for her on the other side, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you don't miss a single part. Drop the name of the city you're watching from in the comments below. I love seeing how far our stories travel, and stay with me all the way to the end, because what Adelaide Pierce brought with her to Red Fork, Texas, is going to shake this whole territory to its bones. The cowboy did not ask her name. He crouched down beside her in the middle of the wagon road, one knee in the mud, and gathered the loose pages of the ledger before the wind could take them. He did not look at the blood. He did not look at her face. He stacked the pages careful and even, the way a man stacks cards he intends to count later, and slid them back inside the leather cover. Then he closed the satchel and set it in her lap. "Stand up if you can, ma'am." "I can," Adelaide said. She could not. "Then we'll sit a minute." Boots were coming. She could hear them. 3-4 pairs gathering in a half-circle behind her, the way vultures gather without ever seeming to arrive. A woman's voice said loud enough to carry, "Lord have mercy! Cole, is that what you sent for?" The cowboy did not turn his head. "Silk dress in May," the woman went on. "Silk dress with blood on it, no less. I declare, Cole Hartley, you paid coin money for that." "I reckon I did, Mrs. Halliday." "Well," the woman laughed short and sharp, "reckon you can ask for it back." Adelaide raised her head. She had been raised in drawing rooms where women insulted one another in French and smiled while they did it, and she knew the sound of a knife in a voice regardless of language. She found the woman standing in the road, broad-shouldered calico, a tight knot of gray hair, and she held her gaze until the woman's smile stiffened. "My name," Adelaide said, "is Mrs. Hartley, as of this morning, by the letter your husband's kin signed and witnessed in New York. I expect you to use it." The half-circle went quiet. Mrs. Halliday opened her mouth, closed it. The cowboy Cole did not look up. He was still kneeling in the mud with one hand on the satchel in Adelaide's lap and the other on the ground, as if he was bracing for something. But the corner of his mouth moved. Not a smile, a flicker. "Mrs. Halliday," he said quietly, "you'll oblige me by stepping back." "Cole, I only meant, step back, ma'am." She stepped back. Cole slid his arm under Adelaide's elbow, and when she tried to rise, he rose with her slow and steady, taking her weight without taking her balance. She had never in her life been lifted by a man who did not make her feel lifted. She had been escorted into opera boxes by senators. She had been handed into carriages by her own father. None of them had ever made her feel as if her feet were still her own. "Wagons this way," Cole said. "My trunk. They'll bring it." "They might not. They will." He walked her to the wagon without looking back, and somewhere behind them a man's voice said low, "Get the lady's trunk." Earl and Boots moved, and the trunk came. The ranch lay 7 miles west of Red Fork. Cole drove the wagon with the reins loose in his hands, and for the first 3 miles he did not speak a word. Adelaide held the satchel in her lap with both arms around it. Her dress was ruined. Her hair had come down on one side. Her left wrist throbbed where the old scar had split open again when she hit the ground, and she could feel the fresh blood soaking into the cuff of her sleeve, and she thought, "If he asks, I will lie. If he asks, I will say I caught it on a nail." He did not ask. At the 4th mile, he said without looking at her, "That blood on the ledger yours?" "No." "Didn't think so." He let the horses pick up a little. Another mile passed. "Whose then?" he said. "Does it matter? It might. To you or to the law?" To me. Adelaide turned her face and looked at him. He was not what the photograph had promised. The photograph had shown a clean-shaven man in a good coat, young and solemn. The kind of man a marriage broker put forward when she meant to marry a woman, to a quiet stranger, without frightening her. The man driving this wagon was thinner than the photograph, older in the eyes, a week's beard, rough at the jaw. His hands on the reins were scarred across the knuckles in a way that did not come from cattle. "It belongs to my father," she said. "Is he alive?" "No." Cole nodded once, as if she had confirmed something he had already guessed. "Did you kill him?" "No." "Did you watch it happen?" Adelaide's throat closed. She had not cried yet. Not in the carriage to the station, not on the train, not on the stagecoach, not when the driver told her Red Fork was the next stop, not even when she had seen the cowboy standing on the boardwalk with his hat in his hand and known that this was her husband now. She did not cry now, but she made a sound she had not meant to make, and Cole heard it, and he did not look at her, and somehow that was the kindest thing a man had ever done for her. "I'll ask you no more today, Mrs. Hartley," he said. "Thank you. Don't thank me, I'll ask tomorrow." The house was small. She had expected small. She had not expected clean. The floors had been scrubbed. There was a jar of wildflowers on the kitchen table, yellow and white, set there by a hand that did not know what it was doing, but had tried. She looked at those flowers for a long moment. She said nothing about them. Neither did he. "Kitchen," he said. "Stove. Well's out back. I'll draw for you tonight, and you can do it yourself come morning. Pantry." He opened a door, closed it, opened another. "Your room." "My room." "Yes, ma'am." "Mr. Hartley." "Cole." "Cole." She stopped in the doorway. "Where do you sleep?" "Across the way." "We are married." "By letter." "We are married," she said again. He set her trunk down at the foot of the bed and straightened up, and for the first time since he had lifted her out of the mud, he looked at her full in the face. His eyes were gray. She had not known from the photograph that they would be gray. "Mrs. Hartley," he said, "I sent for a wife. I did not send for a woman in a ruined silk dress running from a dead man's name. I don't know who you are yet, and I don't know what you brought into my house in that satchel, and I don't know whether the law's gonna come riding up that road in the morning asking after you. Until I know you sleep behind a door, I don't open. That ain't cruelty, ma'am. That's courtesy." "I see. Do you? I see that you are a more decent man than my father was." She had not meant to say it. It came out of her before she could catch it. And Cole, who had been about to turn away, stopped. "That's so." "Yes." "Well." He pulled the door closed between them gently. From the other side he said, "Supper's in an hour. You can wash at the basin. I left you a clean shirt on the chair. It's mine, it'll swallow you, but it ain't bloody." She heard his boots go down the hall. Adelaide Pierce sat down on the edge of the bed in Cole Hartley's house and put the satchel on her knees, and she did not cry. She opened the ledger. She turned to the page where her father had written in his last hour, in an unsteady hand, made steadier by fury, the single line, "Ashcroft knows I know. Get the book to a man who will read it." She closed the ledger. "Well, father," she said to the empty room, "I have married him. Now we shall see if he can read." Supper was beef and cornbread and coffee black enough to stand a spoon in. She ate more than she had eaten in 5 days. He watched her eat without appearing to watch. When she finished, he took her plate without comment and washed it in the basin, and when she tried to rise and help, he said, "Sit, ma'am," and she sat. Cole. The ledger. "Yes, Mrs. Hartley." "I would like you to read it." His hands went still in the water. "Tonight." "Yes. That's a serious thing to ask of a man on his wedding day." "I know it." He dried his hands on a rag. He sat down across from her at the table. He did not reach for the ledger. He reached for the coffee pot, and he poured for them both, and he slid her cup across to her, and he said, Before you open that book in this kitchen, Mrs. Hartley, you tell me one thing. The man whose blood is on those pages, did he love you? He was my father. That ain't what I asked. Adelaide looked down into her coffee. Yes, she said. He loved me, badly and late and not enough. But yes. And the man he was running from. I was going to marry him. Cole's hand closed slowly around his cup. Name, he said. Victor Ashcroft. She had not expected him to react. She had expected him to ask her to spell it, or to ask her who Victor Ashcroft was, or to tell her he had never heard of any such person, because Victor Ashcroft was a Fifth Avenue name, and this was a Texas kitchen, and those were two different countries. She had expected at most a polite nod. Cole Hartley set his cup down very, very carefully, as if he did not trust his hand. He stood up. He walked to the window, and he stood with his back to her for a long count of 10. And she watched his shoulders, and she saw the moment he made a fist and the moment he made himself unmake it. Ma'am, he said. Yes. I need you to say that name one more time. Slow. Victor Ashcroft. Of New York. Of New York. Of the Ashcroft and Delane Banking House. Of the Northern Pacific Land Office. Of the Culver City killings in '79. Adelaide's hand went cold around the cup. How? She said. Do you know that name? He did not answer her. He walked past her and out the kitchen door into the yard, and through the window she saw him take his hat off and press the heel of his hand against his forehead, and then she saw him put the hat back on and just stand there in the dark, looking at nothing. When he came back in, he sat down. He did not pick up the coffee. Mrs. Hartley. Adelaide. Adelaide. He said it like a man trying out a word in a language he had not spoken in a long time. I was a Pinkerton agent for 11 years. I left the service 3 years ago. I left it because my partner was shot through the throat in a hotel room in St. Louis, and the man who paid for the bullet was a banker out of New York, whose name I could never put on paper because every magistrate north of the Ohio was in his pocket. He paused. I came west to be a rancher. I sent for a wife because I was tired of being alone in a house with a dead man's name in my head. And I brought you the dead man's name. You brought me the book, ma'am. He looked at the satchel between them on the table. Open it, he said. She opened it. He did not reach for it. He let her turn the pages. He looked at what she showed him. He looked at the columns. He looked at the initials. He looked at the dates. When she turned to the last entry, her father's unsteady hand, the single line, the fingerprint at the corner that was not ink, he put one finger on that fingerprint and he held it there for a long moment. Your father was a bookkeeper. My father was a partner. I was his bookkeeper. His eyes came up to hers. You did these columns. I did every column in that book for 11 years. I taught myself at 16 because my father could not keep a straight ledger to save his life, and my mother was dead. And there was no one else. I know every entry. I know every payment to every shell company. I know every dollar that moved from the Ashcroft and Delane vault into the Northern Pacific Land Office and back out again into the pockets of 6 judges and a United States senator. I know Cole Hartley because I wrote it down, and Ashcroft knew you knew. He found out 3 nights ago. My father tried to burn the book. I took it from the fire. Ashcroft came to the house with 2 men. My father... She stopped, breathed. My father bought me the stairs, the back stairs, and a window, and a carriage on the corner with a driver who owed him a favor from the war. Her mouth twisted. I did not know my father had a friend in the world. It turns out he had exactly one, and he spent him on me. Cole was silent a long time. Then he said very quietly, Mrs. Hartley, Adelaide, I need you to understand what you have done. I have put us both in danger. You have put us in a war, ma'am. I know it. Ashcroft will come. I know it. Not himself. He'll send men. And when those men don't come home, he'll send more. And when those men don't come home, he'll come himself, because a man like Victor Ashcroft cannot afford to let a woman with a ledger live anywhere on the continent of North America. Cole's voice never rose. It only got quieter. Do you understand what you've asked me in my own kitchen on our wedding day? Yes. Say it. I have asked you to die beside me if it comes to that. Cole Hartley looked at her across the table for a long, long moment. Then he did something she did not expect. He laughed. It was a short laugh, and a tired laugh, and there was no joy in it. But there was something in it that was not grief either, and she held on to that sound in her chest because she had not heard a man laugh in her house in 3 days. "Ma'am," he said, "I have been waiting 3 years for somebody to walk into this kitchen and ask me exactly that." She lay awake that night behind the closed door he had promised her. She lay in his shirt, which swallowed her, as he had said it would, and she listened to the sounds of a house that was not hers yet, but might one day become hers. The creak of the roof, cooling the shift of the horses in the barn, the small noise of a man she did not know, moving in a room across a hall she had not yet walked. At one point, she heard him strike a match. At another, she heard him open and close the lid of a box that sounded heavier than a jewelry box had any right to sound. She did not have to see it to know what was in it. She had grown up in a house of men. She knew the weight of a revolver in a box at midnight. She sat up. She pulled the satchel onto the bed. She opened it. Not to the ledger, to the bottom. She drew out her own pistol, small, pearl-handled, a lady's piece, the one her father had given her on her 18th birthday, and taught her to load in the garden behind the house, while the band played inside, and she laid it across her lap, and she waited. A long way off on the wagon road from town, a horse was coming. One horse. At a trot, not a gallop. She could not have heard it through the walls of that house. Cole Hartley could. She heard his boots hit the floor in the other room. She heard him cross the hall. She did not hear him stop at her door because he did not stop at her door. He went straight past it and out onto the porch. Then a moment later she heard the rider rein in. She heard a young voice, breathless. "Telegram for Mr. Hartley. Come in from Chicago this evening. Operator said to write it out tonight, not wait for morning." "Give it here, son." "Yes, sir." "You didn't read it?" "No, sir." "Good boy. There's $1. Ride home slow, the horse is lathered." "Yes, sir." "Thank you, sir." The horse went away. The porch was quiet for a long time. Then the porch boards creaked under a man's weight standing still, and she heard Cole Hartley strike a second match, and she knew he was reading the telegram by its light, because he did not want to wake her by lighting a lamp in the kitchen. She heard the match go out. She heard him crush the paper in his fist. And then through the wall between them, low and even, not meant for her, but meant exactly for her, he said one sentence into the dark. "Lord have mercy. Who the hell did I marry?" Adelaide Pierce closed her hand around the pearl handle of her father's pistol, and she looked at the door between her room and the hall, and she answered him, just as quiet, just as even though he could not hear her, and she did not mean for him to. "A woman," she said, "who is going to make Victor Ashcroft wish he had never learned to read a ledger." The house went still around them both. Outside, past the dark yard, past the 7 miles of wagon road, past the telegraph wire that ran all the way east until it crossed the Mississippi and climbed the Alleghenies and came down into the gaslit streets of New York. A clock on a banker's mantel struck midnight. And Victor Ashcroft, in a blue velvet chair by a dying fire, set down the cable his man had brought him from the Red Fork operator's desk, and he smiled because he had found her. Cole Hartley was in the kitchen before the rooster. Adelaide found him at the table with the crushed telegram smoothed flat under one hand and a revolver broken open under the other, feeding bullets into the cylinder one by one, slow and even, the way a man says a rosary. "Morning, Mrs. Hartley?" "Adelaide." "Adelaide." He did not look up. "Coffee's on. You'll want a cup before I tell you what's on this paper." "Tell me now." "Sit down first." "Cole, sit." She sat. He slid the telegram across the table. She read it twice. She read it 3 times. On the 4th reading, the words finally meant what they said. Marshall Deegan dead. Stop shot through heart. Rear alley commercial hotel. Stop wife was accompanied by Pierce woman hour before departure. Stop warrant issued. Stop. Look to yourself. Hartley. I did not kill a marshal, Adelaide said. I know it. I have never in my life laid eyes on a Marshal Deegan. I know that too. Then why? Because it ain't about what you did, ma'am. It's about what he's saying you did. Cole snapped the cylinder shut. Ashcroft needs a warrant to follow you across state lines. He couldn't get one for a dead banker. He can get one for a dead federal marshal inside an afternoon, and he did. And now every lawman between here and New York is looking for a silk dress murderess who's armed and dangerous and fled west by rail. That's a lie. It's paper, ma'am. Paper don't care if it's a lie. Adelaide set the telegram down. Her hand was steady. She was almost proud of it. Who sent you this? Man named Beaumont. Runs the Chicago office I used to run. He owes me his life twice over, and he still didn't sign his name. That's how bad it is. How bad is it, Cole? Mrs. Hartley there is a reward on you by breakfast and a posse by supper. She closed her eyes. How long do we have? 3 days, maybe 4. A fast rider out of St. Louis with a warrant in his saddlebag can make Red Fork in 4, a slow one in 6. And if they come here, then they come here. Cole, Adelaide. He set the revolver down. He looked at her full and steady the way he had looked at her in the doorway the night before. I have been a lawman 11 years. I know how a warrant travels. I know what it looks like when it rides into a town. I know the men who ride with it. And I am telling you plain, I married a woman yesterday, and I am not giving her back to a banker in New York, not in 3 days, not in 30, not ever. Her throat closed. You do not know me. I know enough. You have known me 12 hours. Ma'am, I have been a Pinkerton 11 years. 12 hours is long enough. She had meant to answer that. She could not find the shape of the answer. She reached across the table and laid her hand on top of his where it rested next to the revolver, and he let her, and neither of them spoke for a long moment. Then she said, What do we do? We ride to town. Now, before the noon stage brings the newspapers, I need to see the telegraph log before Halliday wipes it. Halliday. The woman from yesterday. Her husband runs the wire out of Red Fork. Anything cabled in or out of this county, Earl Halliday's hand touched it. And his wife's got a mouth on her like I told you last night, which is a blessing in this case because if Ashcroft's paid a bribe through that wire in the last 6 weeks, Mrs. Halliday has already mentioned it to 6 women over a pie. You want me to come. I want you beside me, ma'am, for the rest of what I hope is a very long life. We'll start with town. The ride in was 40 minutes. He did not let her wear silk. He gave her a gray riding skirt that had belonged to a woman whose name he did not offer, and a plain shirtwaist and a hat, with a brim wide enough to put her face in shadow. She braided her hair the way her mother's maid had taught her at 9 years old, and had not braided it since. You look, Cole said, like a rancher's wife. Is that good? It's good for today. They rode side by side. He on his bay, she on a small gray mare he had saddled without asking whether she could ride. She could. Her father had put her on a horse before he had put her on a ledger. It was the one thing he had given her that had nothing to do with money. Halfway in, she said, Cole. You said last night, your partner, shot in St. Louis. Yes? Ashcroft paid. Yes? Did your partner have a family? A long pause. A wife and a boy. The boy was 4. Where are they now? Chicago. I send what I can. It ain't enough. It will be, she said. He looked over at her. Ma'am. It will be Cole. When we are done with Victor Ashcroft, there will be money enough to put that boy through any school in the country, and his mother in a house of her own, and the widows of every other man that banker has buried besides. I know where every dollar is. I wrote it down. He did not answer for a long time. Then quietly, Adelaide Pierce, I do not think you understand what kind of woman you are. I understand exactly what kind of woman I am, Mr. Hartley. It took me until 3 nights ago to find out, but I understand it now. Red Fork was half awake when they rode in. Cole swung down at the telegraph office and tied both horses to the rail without looking left or right. Adelaide came down after him. Across the street, 3 men outside the feed store stopped talking when they saw her. One of them took his hat off. The other 2 did not. "Mornin', gentlemen," Cole said, not to them, over his shoulder, pleasant as Sunday. "Mornin', Hartley." The hat went back on. Inside the telegraph office smelled of tobacco and hot brass. Earl Halliday was at the key, sleeves rolled, spectacles down his nose. His wife was behind the counter with a ledger of her own, a receipt ledger, and her mouth opened the instant Adelaide stepped through the door. "Well, I declare, Mrs. Halliday." "If it ain't, Mrs. Halliday, I'd be obliged," Cole said, "if you'd let me say good morning to your husband before you said good morning to my wife." Her mouth closed. "Earl." "Cole." "I need to see the incoming log, last 6 weeks. Earl Halliday's fingers paused on the key. "That's a federal log, Cole." "I know it is. I can't show that to a private citizen. You can show it to a man who spent 11 years carrying federal paper and who's asking you as a favor between neighbors." A beat. "Why?" "Because if I don't see it in the next 10 minutes, Earl, a United States Marshal, is going to see it in the next 10 days, and I'd rather you and me have the conversation first." Earl Halliday took his spectacles off. He looked at Cole. He looked at Adelaide. He looked at his wife, who for once in her life had nothing to say. "Back room," he said. 5 minutes. Vera, mind the counter and mind your tongue." "Earl Halliday, don't you dare. Mind your tongue, Vera." The logbook was leather and the size of a family Bible. Cole opened it to the 1st of April and began to read. Adelaide stood at his shoulder. "What are we looking for?" she said. "Anything paid." Meaning, telegrams get sent collect or prepaid. A prepaid telegram from a party that ain't local, going to a local party that ain't a merchant in a town this size, that's a man buying something he oughtn't. How many in 6 weeks? In Red Fork ought to be none. She looked down. "Cole." "Yes?" "There are 9. Show me." She ran her finger down the column. Her eyes had been trained on columns since she was 16, and she saw patterns the way other people saw faces. 9 prepaid telegrams, all sent from one of 3 offices, Chicago, St. Louis, Kansas City. All received by a single party here. No name, just initials. J.H. J.H. Earl Halliday in the doorway made a small noise. Cole turned. "Earl." "I don't know any J.H. "Earl, who is J.H.? "Cole." "Earl." Earl Halliday's face went the color of old paper. "Judge Harlan," he whispered. The room went quiet. "Judge Harlan, who holds the bench in this county," Cole said. "Cole, I swear before God, I did not read those telegrams. A cable operator don't read cables, he just sends them. I can't help what a man puts on a wire." "Earl, I am not blaming you. I am asking you a question. Has Judge Harlan in the last 6 weeks come into this office, paid cash, and sent a reply?" "Yes." "To whom?" "A Mr. V, a New York." Adelaide's hand tightened on the edge of the logbook. "Cole." "I heard him, ma'am." "That is, I know what it is." She turned the page. Her finger stopped. "Cole." "Yes. Yesterday morning, 4:45 in the afternoon, a prepaid cable came in for Judge Harlan from V, a New York City desk. The ledger says 9 words paid, but the log shows the operator keyed it in 40 seconds. Meaning it was more than 9 words and the operator was bribed to log 9. Earl Halliday in the doorway made a different sound now, a smaller one. "Earl." "Cole, I did not key that cable." "Who did?" "Vera." Cole Hartley walked out of the back room and into the front of the telegraph office with the logbook under his arm and his hat pushed back on his head, and Vera Halliday took one look at him and started talking before he had opened his mouth. "Cole, whatever Earl told you, Mrs. Halliday." "I had nothing to do with Mrs. Halliday. I am going to ask you one question, and you are going to answer it true, because if you don't, I am going to walk this logbook down to Judge Harlan's courtroom myself and lay it on his bench in front of every man in town. Do you understand me?" Her mouth worked. "Yes." "Yesterday afternoon. Cable for the judge from New York. How many words?" Silence. "How many words, Vera?" 31. Adelaide heard it. She heard her own breath stop. "Read it to me," Cole said. "From memory. I know you got it." "Cole, read it." Vera Halliday closed her eyes, and out of her mouth, in a voice that was not her voice anymore, came the cable that Victor Ashcroft had paid her husband's wife $30 in gold to deliver in secret to a sitting judge of the state of Texas. Pierce woman bound. Your county stop travels as Hartley bride. Stop detain on any pretext until my men arrive. Stop 2,000 on delivery. Stop 5. On the ledger she carries, stop Ashcroft. The office was silent. Earl Halliday in the doorway of the back room sat down on a barrel because his knees had stopped working. Adelaide Pierce stood very still. Then she said quite softly, "Mr. Hartley." "Yes, Adelaide." "Judge Harlan has been paid $2,000 to put me in a cell." "Yes, ma'am." "And 5,000 more to put my father's ledger in Victor Ashcroft's hands." "Yes." "And that cable came in yesterday afternoon before my stagecoach had crossed the county line." "Yes." She turned to Vera Halliday. "Mrs. Halliday." "Ma'am." "Mrs. Halliday, yesterday in the road you called me a silk dress. Do you remember?" "Ma'am, You called me a silk dress with blood on it and you laughed. You laughed at me while I was on my knees in the mud of your town. And the whole while, Mrs. Halliday, you had $30 of a New York banker's gold in the pocket of that calico, and you knew exactly whose blood was on my dress, because it was the same blood the man in New York was paying you to help him finish spilling." Vera Halliday's mouth opened, closed. "Ma'am?" "Don't ma'am me. You do not get to ma'am me." "Adelaide." Cole's hand on her elbow steady. "Not here." Cole. "Not here. Not yet." She swallowed. She gave Vera Halliday one long last look, and Vera Halliday did not meet it. Toy. They rode out of Red Fork at a trot, not a gallop, because a gallop would be noticed. 2 blocks from the telegraph office, Cole said under his breath, "Don't turn your head. Man on the boardwalk outside the hotel. Gray coat, black hat, watching. I see him. You see him. I have been watched by men in gray coats since I was 9 years old, Cole. I see him. He's one of Ashcroft's. I know it. He came in on the morning stage. He is 2 days ahead of the warrant." Her throat closed again, but differently this time. "What do we do?" "We ride home slow. We do not look back. And then, Mrs. Hartley, before the sun sets tonight, you and I are going to sit at my kitchen table, and you are going to open that ledger one more time, and you are going to show me every single name in it that lives west of the Mississippi." "Why west?" "Because Judge Harlan ain't the only bought man in this territory, ma'am. And before Ashcroft's men get here, I need to know which of my neighbors are going to meet them at the county line with a drink and which are going to meet them with a gun." They were a mile out of town when the rider caught them up. He came hard from behind at a full gallop, and Cole's hand went to his holster before the rider had halved the distance, and Adelaide pulled her mare up short and put her own hand in her pocket where the pearl-handled pistol lay. "Mr. Hartley." "Mr. Hartley, sir." A boy, not a man. The same boy she realized whose voice she had heard on the porch at midnight. "Son?" "Sir, she said, give it to you and ride." "Who said?" "Mrs. Halliday, sir. She come running after me. She put this in my hand, sir, and she said ride and don't stop and don't let nobody see and give it to Mr. Hartley before the sun got overhead and—" "Easy, son, easy. Give it here." The boy thrust a folded paper at him. Cole took it. The boy wheeled his horse and was gone at a gallop before Cole had unfolded the first crease. Cole read it. Adelaide watched his face. She saw the moment his mouth went thin. She saw the moment his knuckles whitened on the paper. She saw the moment which was a new moment, a moment she had not yet seen in him, In the short hours she had been his wife, where Cole Hartley, quiet, Cole patient, Cole, who lifted women out of the mud without looking at their faces, went somewhere very cold inside himself and closed a door. Cole. He did not answer. Cole. He folded the paper. He put it inside his vest. Mrs. Hartley. Yes? Vera Halliday is a worse woman than I thought, and a better one than I feared, and she has just handed us the knife we did not know we needed. What does it say? It says that the man in the gray coat outside the hotel is not one of Ashcroft's. Then whose? Cole Hartley turned his horse to face her, and the sun was behind him, and she could not quite see his eyes. Ours, he said. Ours, Adelaide. He reached across the distance between their horses, and he took her gloved hand in his bare one, and he held it. Your father did not send you west alone, and he did not spend his one friend on you. He spent two. The man in the gray coat outside that hotel is a Pinkerton, my Pinkerton, the one I trained, the one who rode out of Chicago the same day you rode out of New York with orders from a dying man in a stairwell to follow the ledger to Texas and put himself at my door. And he has been sitting on that boardwalk since yesterday noon, Mrs. Hartley, waiting to see whether I was the man your father thought I was. Adelaide Pierce, who had not cried in 4 days, who had not cried through the stairwell or the carriage or the train or the stagecoach or the mud of Red Fork, put her gloved hand over her mouth and finally made a sound. My father sent him. Your father sent him. My father knew your name. Your father knew my name, ma'am, from a file I did not know existed. She could not speak. Cole's hand tightened on hers. Adelaide Pierce, you did not run west. You were sent west, by a man who loved you late and badly, and not enough, but who loved you well enough at the last, to put you in the one house on the continent of North America where Victor Ashcroft could not reach you without a war. Cole. Ma'am, I am not done. There is one more line on this paper. He drew it out. He read it to her aloud in the middle of the wagon road, with the sun climbing toward noon, and Red Fork at their backs, and 7 miles of open country between them and the house that was hers now. 4 riders out of St. Louis, made Sedalia by midnight, riding hard. Will make your county line by Thursday dusk. Signed your father's friend. Adelaide did the arithmetic in her head, the way she did every arithmetic, automatic, merciless fast. Cole, that is 48 hours. 46. 46 hours until 4 of Victor Ashcroft's men ride into Red Fork with a federal warrant and a bought judge and a telegraph operator's wife who will swear to any lie she is paid to swear to. Yes, ma'am. And what do we do in 46 hours? Cole Hartley let go of her hand. He turned his horse back toward home. He settled his hat lower on his forehead. In 46 hours, Mrs. Hartley, you and I are going to turn this county upside down, shake every bought man out of it, and be waiting at that county line on Thursday at dusk with a ledger in one hand and a loaded rifle in the other. And when Victor Ashcroft's 4 men ride over that rise, they are going to find out exactly who the hell I married. He touched his heels to the bay. Adelaide Pierce, in a gray riding skirt and a borrowed hat, and her mother's braid down her back, kicked the little mare forward and rode beside her husband of one day into the longest 46 hours of both of their lives. They rode the 7 miles home without speaking a word, and when Cole Hartley swung down from the bay at his own gate, he did it without taking his eyes off the rise to the north. Get inside, Adelaide. Cole? Inside, now. Don't light the lamps till I say. She went. She did not argue. She had grown up in a house where men gave orders in low voices, and the women who ignored them died, and she had promised herself 3 nights ago in a stairwell with her father's blood on her hands that she would not be one of those women anymore. She stood inside the kitchen with her back against the door, and she listened. She heard him walk the perimeter of the house. She heard him check the barn. She heard him stop once for a long count, and then move again. When he came in, he was carrying a rifle she had not seen before, and a second revolver, and a box of shells that weighed more than a box of shells ought to weigh. We're clear, he said. For now. Cole. He'll come at dusk. Who? The Pinkerton, your father's man. He won't ride up in daylight, not with Ashcroft's scout sitting a hotel porch in town. He'll come through the back pasture after dark. Then we have ours. We have ours. Sit down, Mrs. Hartley. Open the book. She opened the book. She worked the ledger, the way a surgeon works a body, one page at a time, one column at a time, one name at a time, her finger moving down the rows faster than Cole's eyes could follow. And every few minutes, she stopped and said a name aloud. And every time she said a name, Cole wrote it on a sheet of butcher paper at his elbow, in a hand so neat it looked printed. Harlan, Judge, County Bench. 2000 in 1878, another 2 in 79, 1200, this past January. Got him. Finney, Sheriff, Wichita County. Got him. Lamarck, Land Commissioner, State Office, Austin. Cole's pencil stopped. Lamarck. Yes. Adelaide, you are sure? I am sure, Cole, because my father paid him personally in June of 77, and again in October of 78, the second payment delivered by a courier who signed his name as C. Lamarck, Jr., which is the son, which is the man who currently sits in the office. His father held before him because a New York banker bought the seat back for the family after the father died. Cole set the pencil down. Mrs. Hartley. Yes? Do you understand that Lamarck signs every land title in the state of Texas? I understand that, Cole. Do you understand that every acre of ground in this territory, including the ground under this house, was granted by a patent that bears his signature? Yes. Do you understand what you just told me? She lifted her face from the page. I told you, Mr. Hartley, that the Commissioner of the General Land Office of the state of Texas has been on Victor Ashcroft's payroll for 9 years, and that every railroad section between the Red River and the Rio Grande was signed over to shell companies that he and my father controlled, and that if I walk this ledger into the right office in Austin, Cole, by Monday morning, there will not be a single Ashcroft title left standing in this state. She closed the ledger. I did not come west to run from him. I came west to bury him. I did not know it when I got on the train. I know it now. Cole Hartley looked at her for a long moment. Then he said quietly, I married up. Mr. Hartley, I married up, ma'am, and I do not say that as a joke. The Pinkerton came at 9:15. He did not knock. He gave the whistle Cole had taught him in Chicago in the winter of 75. 2 short, 1 long, the signal for a friend at the door, and Cole answered it from the kitchen with a single short whistle. Back, and the door opened, and Samuel Reed stepped into Cole Hartley's house, with dust on his boots and a Winchester over his shoulder, and a face Adelaide Pierce had never seen before in her life. Cole. Sam. Been a while. 3 years next month. Samuel Reed took his hat off. He was younger than Cole by a decade. Blonde going to brown, a jaw that had been broken once and set badly. His eyes went to Adelaide and stayed there. Mrs. Hartley. Mr. Reed. Your father is dead. Yes, I know he's dead, ma'am. I was going to say your father was a better man at the end than he was in the middle, and he loved you more than he knew how to say. And he sent me west 10 days before he died because he had a feeling. And I did not believe him, and now I am standing in this kitchen and I believe him. Adelaide Pierce did not weep. She nodded once. Thank you, Mr. Reed. Sam, ma'am. Sam. Cole set a cup of coffee in front of him and said, Talk. And Sam Reed talked.
Banad.
4 men. Out of St. Louis Monday morning. I followed them 2 days on the train and then cut ahead on the Katy line Tuesday night. They are not Pinkertons. They are not agency at all. They are private hired out of a saloon on Chestnut Street by a man named Ballard, who is Ashcroft's dog, and has been Ashcroft's dog since the Culver City killings. I know Ballard, Cole said. I thought you might. Ballard shot my partner. I know he did. Silence. Is Ballard with them? Ballard is with them, Cole. Cole's hand closed slowly around his coffee cup. Sam. Yes. I want Ballard. I figured. I want him alive. I want him on a wagon to Austin, sat up next to Commissioner Lamarck, both of them in irons. Both of them with their mouths running, because if Victor Ashcroft thinks he can reach into the state of Texas and buy a wife and a judge and a land office and a sheriff out from under me, I am going to send him back, the lot of them, with a bow on. Cole, yes. You can't take 4 men with a ranch rifle and a revolver and a bride who's been in the territory 2 days. I know I can't. Then what are you proposing? Cole looked at Adelaide. I am proposing, he said, that my wife and I ride into Red Fork at first light and arrest Judge Harlan before breakfast. Sam Reed put his coffee down. Arrest him. Arrest him! With what authority, Cole? You are a private citizen. I am a private citizen who can swear out a complaint before any justice of the peace in this state. And there is a justice of the peace in Red Fork who is not on Ashcroft's payroll, because I know every man in that town, and I know which ones drink with which, and old man Fletcher has been on a bench for 31 years and has not taken so much as a free drink in all of them. Fletcher is 83 years old, Cole. Fletcher is 83 years old and has more backbone than the rest of that town put together. He will sign the warrant. On what charge? Bribery, conspiracy, and, Cole's eyes moved to the ledger on the table, obstruction of a federal inquiry, because Mrs. Hartley here is the surviving witness of record in a case that has been open in the Chicago office since 1879, and I am going to have Sam here telegraph Chicago tonight and get the file reopened by morning. Sam Reed whistled long and low. Cole. Yes, that is either the finest plan I have ever heard or the stupidest, and I will not know which for about 16 hours. That makes 2 of us. Adelaide did not sleep. She sat at the kitchen table in Cole's borrowed shirt with the ledger open in front of her and a fresh sheet of butcher paper at her elbow, and she wrote. She wrote the names. She wrote the dates. She wrote the amounts. She wrote in the neatest columns of her life a sworn statement in her own hand, 7 pages long, that she intended to put in front of Justice Fletcher at 8 o'clock in the morning and swear to on her mother's Bible. Cole came in once around 3 and put a blanket over her shoulders without speaking. She did not lift her head. He did not wait for her to. At 4, he said from the doorway, Adelaide. Yes. You have been writing 5 hours. I know. You are going to need a steady hand at 8. My hand is steady, Cole. Come to bed, Mrs. Hartley. She looked up. He was not looking at her. He was looking at the floor between them. I will sleep in the chair, he said. The bed is yours. I only meant a woman does not go to face a bought judge at dawn on 3 cups of coffee and no rest. And I do not intend to let my wife lose this fight before it starts, because I was too proud to ask her to stop writing. Adelaide Pierce closed the ledger. She stood up. She walked past him into the room he had given her, and she lay down on top of the quilt fully dressed, and she closed her eyes, and she said through the open door, Cole. Yes. Do not sleep in the chair. A long pause. Ma'am, do not sleep in the chair. Sleep across the hall in your own room with your door open and mine open. And if a horse comes up that road before sunrise, you will hear it before I do, and I will not have lost my husband to a crick in his neck. That is all I am saying, Mr. Hartley. That is all. Another pause. Yes, ma'am. She heard him cross the hall. She heard the creak of his bed. She heard him lay the rifle down on the floor within reach of his hand. She heard him let out a breath he had been holding, she thought, since he had read the telegram that morning. She slept. The horse came at 5:40. It came at a full gallop from the south, not the north, and it was not 1 rider, but 2, and Cole was on the porch with the rifle up before Adelaide had her boots on. Sam. It's me, Cole. Who's with you? Earl Halliday. Cole, and he has something you need to see now. Cole did not lower the rifle. Come up slow. Hands where I can see. They came up slow. Earl Halliday half fell off the horse. His face was the color of the gray dawn, and his collar was sweated through, and he had a paper in his hand, and when Cole took it from him, the first thing Cole saw was that it was wet at the corner, where Earl had been gripping it. "Cable?" Earl gasped. "Come in at 5. From New York. I keyed it myself this time. Vera don't know. I rode straight out." Cole read it. Adelaide watched his face. And for the second time in 2 days, she saw the door close behind Cole Hartley's eyes. "Cole?" He did not answer. "Cole, what does it say?" He held it out to her. She took it in a hand that she would not let shake, and she read in the plain block letters of a Western Union key, "Hartley of Red Fork. Wife is not your wife. Marriage letter forged. Pierce woman arrived under false contract. Release the ledger and the woman to my men at the county line, and you will not be harmed. Refuse and your ranch burns tonight. Ashcroft." Adelaide read it twice. She lifted her head. "Cole?" "Yes." "What marriage letter?" His mouth opened, closed. Cole Hartley. "What marriage letter?" Adelaide. "What marriage letter?" Sam Reed very quietly from the yard. "Cole, tell her." Cole Hartley put his hand against the porch post and leaned on it. Adelaide. "Yes. I did not send for a mail-order bride." The world went still. "What?" "I did not send for a bride, ma'am. I have not sent for anything in 3 years but beef prices and ammunition. The letter you answered, the photograph you were sent, the contract you signed in New York, I did not send them." "Cole, your father sent them." "What?" "Your father forged my name on a marriage broker's letter and sent it east with my photograph and my description and a bank draft on my account that I did not write, ma'am. And he did it because he knew Ashcroft was closing on him, and he needed a place to put you where no federal warrant could easily find you. And the one man in the state of Texas whose house Victor Ashcroft could not walk into without starting a war was a retired Pinkerton who had sworn on his partner's grave to put that banker in the ground." Adelaide could not breathe. "Cole." "He forged it, ma'am. Every word." "Then our marriage is as legal as any marriage ever signed in this state. The letter was a forgery. The marriage was not. You stood in front of a justice in New York and spoke a vow, and signed your true name, and so did my proxy, and a forged letter does not unmake a spoken vow. We are married, Mrs. Hartley. What we are not is married by my doing. We are married by your father's." She put her hand on the porch rail to hold herself up. "He sent me," she whispered to a stranger. "He sent you, ma'am, to the one stranger in North America who was already hunting the man who killed him. He bet my life on a man he had never met. He bet your life on a file, Mrs. Hartley, on 11 years of Pinkerton paper, and—" Cole's voice caught just once for the first time she had ever heard it. "He bet right." She did not weep. She walked the length of the porch once. She came back. She looked at Sam Reed, who would not meet her eye, and at Earl Halliday, who was staring at his boots, and at Cole Hartley, who was still holding himself up on a porch post with a cable from New York in his fist. "Gentlemen," she said. 3 heads came up. "We will ride to Red Fork at 7. We will wake Justice Fletcher in his bed. I will swear my statement before breakfast. We will arrest Judge Harlan by 10 o'clock. By noon, Mr. Reed will have cabled Austin, Chicago, and the Attorney General of the state of Texas. And by dusk tonight, gentlemen, when Ballard and his 3 men ride across the county line, expecting to find a frightened woman in a silk dress, they will find instead a warrant, a posse, a federal complaint, and the lawful wife of Cole Hartley, waiting for them with her father's book in her hand." Sam Reed said, "Amen." Earl Halliday said, "Ma'am, I'm with you and Vera." "Vera rides with us, Mr. Halliday. She will swear to what she sent and what she received and what she was paid. And she will do it in front of Justice Fletcher or Mr. Reed. Here will swear out a complaint against her in the same breath, and she will sleep tonight in the same cell as the judge she helped buy. That is her choice. Tell her." "Yes, ma'am." Cole Hartley lifted his head off the porch post. He looked at his wife. He did not say, "I married up." He had said it once already, and he was not a man who repeated himself. He said instead, "Get the horses, Sam." They did not make it to Red Fork. They were 3 miles out when Cole drew up short and put a hand on Adelaide's bridle and said quiet, and even as he had said everything else, "Get off the road. Cole, get off the road now." They went off the road into a stand of mesquite, all 4 of them, and they were not hid 20 seconds before the riders came over the rise. Not 4, 6. And the man at the front was not Ballard. The man at the front was Judge Harlan himself in a black coat with a shotgun across his saddle and a face like a man who has lost too much sleep to be afraid of anything anymore. "Hartley!" the judge shouted into the empty road. "Hartley, I know you're out there." Cole's hand was on Adelaide's arm. Tight. "Hartley, I will burn your ranch and every ranch from here to the river. I will hang your Pinkerton friend from his own telegraph pole. I will put your wife in my courtroom on a murder charge by sundown. You come out into this road and you hand me that book, or so help me God. Cole Hartley, I will bury this county to bury you." Cole drew his revolver. Adelaide put her hand over his hand. "No." "Adelaide, no, not you, me." "Ma'am." "Cole Hartley, you listen to me. That man in the road has been paid to kill me since yesterday at 4:45 in the afternoon. He is not here for the ledger. He is here for the witness. And if you ride out of these trees first, he will shoot you dead in the dirt and call it self-defense, and my statement will never reach Justice Fletcher, and Victor Ashcroft will win. Then what? I ride out first. Adelaide. I ride out first with the ledger in my hand in plain sight, and I hand it to him. And while he is looking at the book, Cole, you put a bullet through his right shoulder, not his heart, not his head, his shoulder. Because I want that man alive for Austin, and Sam will take the 2 on the left, and Earl will fire the signal shot that brings the men from the ranch, and we will have 6 of them on the ground in irons inside 2 minutes. Cole stared at her. Men from the ranch. The hands, Cole. Your men. The 6 riders you pay wages to, who I sent Sam to wake at 4 this morning while you were asleep, and who are behind that rise north of the road right now waiting for Earl's signal. You what? I married you yesterday, Mr. Hartley. I did not marry you to watch you die in a wagon road against 6 bought men while I sat in a kitchen. I am Abner Pierce's daughter. I was raised by a man who taught me to count, and I have counted, and there are 10 of us, and 6 of them. And by the time this road is quiet again, we will have every signature we need to bury Victor Ashcroft in federal court. She swung down from the mare. She took the ledger out of the saddlebag. She looked her husband in the face. Shoot straight, Cole Hartley, she said. And Adelaide Pierce in a gray riding skirt and her mother's braid walked out of the mesquite into the middle of a Texas wagon road with a dead man's ledger in her hands and 6 bought riders 30 feet from her and the whole of her life balanced on her husband's trigger finger. The judge saw her. He raised the shotgun. He opened his mouth to speak. He never did. The shot came from the mesquite before the judge's shotgun was level. 1 shot. Clean. Cole Hartley had fired through the brush without breaking a branch, and Judge Harlan's right shoulder opened up and the shotgun dropped into the road, and the judge let out a sound that was not a scream, only a surprise, and he swayed in the saddle, but he did not fall. Hartley. The second shot was Sam Reed's, not Cole's. It took the man to the judge's left through the thigh, and the man went off his horse and hit the road hard and did not get up. The third shot was Earl Halliday's signal fired into the air, both barrels of a shotgun Adelaide had not known he carried, and the sound of it rolled north across the flats, and came back as a different sound. The sound of hoofbeats, 6 riders coming hard out of the dawn from behind the rise. The 4 men still mounted in the road looked north. That was their mistake. When they looked back, Cole Hartley was already in the road with his revolver up, and Sam Reed was coming out of the trees on the other side with the Winchester at his shoulder, and Adelaide Pierce was standing in the middle of it all with a ledger in her hand and her mother's braid down her back, and one of the 4 men, a big one, red-bearded, a Colt half-drawn, looked at her and said, "God Almighty." "Put it down, mister," Adelaide said. He put it down. They all put it down. By the time the 6 ranch hands came thundering over the rise with rifles across their saddles. There were 4 men on their knees in the road with their hands on their heads, and 1 man bleeding from a shoulder, and 1 man bleeding from a thigh, and Cole Hartley was walking slow down the line of them with irons in his hand, checking faces. He stopped at the judge. "Your Honor, Cole Hartley, you have shot a sitting judge of the state of Texas." "Yes, Your Honor." "And you will hang for it." "No, Your Honor." "You will hang, sir, by sundown." "Your Honor," Cole said quietly, "where is Ballard?" Judge Harlan's mouth closed. "Your Honor, where is Ballard?" "Go to hell, Hartley." Cole looked up. He looked at the four men on their knees. He looked at the red-bearded one. "You, name." "Crane." "Crane, where's Ballard?" Crane looked at the judge. The judge's eyes burned into him. Crane looked back at Cole. "Mr. Crane said, I ain't dying for a New York banker, and I ain't dying for a crooked judge neither. Ballard split from us in Sedalia." "Split where?" "North." "North where?" "Mister, I don't know north where. Ballard took 2 men and a fresh string of horses and rode out of that railhead 6 hours ahead of us. He told us ride on to Red Fork and make a noise. He didn't say what he was doing. He don't say what he's doing. He never has." Cole went very still. "Sam." "I heard him, Cole." "Sam Ballard ain't in this road." "I know." "Ballard split in Sedalia with 2 men and fresh horses 6 hours ahead, and we have been sitting at the ranch for 36 hours. Cole." "Sam, the ranch is—" "Cole, I know." Adelaide's hand suddenly on his arm. "Cole." "Adelaide, the hands are all here." "Cole, the hands are all here." She said it slow, and she said it even, and she watched his face work through what she had already worked through, and she saw the moment his stomach dropped out from under him, because the same moment it had dropped out from under hers. 6 hands. All 6. All on the rise behind them. All here in the road. "Who is at the house?" Nobody answered. The wind came up out of the south and moved the judge's coat, and in the silence of that wagon road, 5 miles from the house Cole Hartley had built with his own hands, Adelaide Pierce heard very far off a sound she had heard once before in her life. She had heard it the night she was 11 years old, and her father's warehouse on South Street had gone up with $80,000 of cotton inside it. She knew what fire sounded like at a distance. "Cole." "I hear it, ma'am." "Cole, the house." They left the 6 men in the road with 2 hands to guard them, and they rode. They rode the 5 miles back to the ranch the way Cole had ridden out of the Pinkerton office in St. Louis the night his partner was killed, which is to say, as fast as a horse can be asked to go without being asked to die. And Adelaide Pierce, who had not sat a horse at a full gallop since she was 14 years old, stayed at Cole's shoulder the whole way, because a gray mare knows when her rider has stopped breathing and she runs harder. They topped the rise. The house was not burning. The barn was. One wing of it at the back orange against the morning sky, the smoke going straight up because there was no wind. "Ballard!" Cole roared, swinging down before the bay had stopped. "Ballard, come out!" No answer. "Ballard!" A rifle shot. From the roof of the smokehouse. It kicked up dirt 2 feet from Cole's boot. Cole went sideways into the water trough and came up with his revolver in one hand and the reins of the bay in the other. And the bay plunged backward, and Cole cursed and let her go. And from the roof of the smokehouse, a voice Adelaide had never heard before said, loud and easy as a man calling across a saloon, "Cole Hartley, I've been waiting on you." "Ballard." "The same. You got a minute, Cole." "Not for you." "Oh, you got a minute for me." Ballard. "I got your wife's ledger, Cole." The world stopped. "You don't have anything of mine, Ballard." "Oh, I got the book. Took it out of your kitchen about an hour ago. Your missus left it on the table in a fine hand she writes in Cole. I gotta say I read the first 12 pages by lamplight and I was impressed." Adelaide's hand went to her saddlebag. Her hand closed on leather. On her own saddlebag. On her own ledger, which she had at Cole's insistence brought with her. She met Cole's eyes across 20 feet of yard. She gave very slightly the smallest shake of her head. Cole Hartley, kneeling behind a water trough with a rifle bullet cooling in the dirt 2 feet from him, began very slowly to smile. "Ballard?" Yes, Cole. You got a ledger in your hand. I sure do. A leather ledger, with a black cover, and a wax seal on the spine. That's the one. Ballard. Yes, Cole. That is not the ledger. Silence from the smokehouse. Ballard. That is the decoy my wife made last night at the kitchen table. She wrote it in her own hand in 3 hours by lamplight, and she filled it with every name and date you wanted to find in it, and she left it on the table on purpose, because she said, and I quote, "If a man comes through my kitchen in my absence, he is not a guest, and he does not get the real book." So if you read 12 pages Ballard and you were impressed, I am sorry to tell you that you were impressed by the handwriting of a woman who has been 3 steps ahead of you since Tuesday. A longer silence. Then from the smokehouse roof, a laugh. Not a friendly laugh. A low, tired, genuine laugh. Cole Hartley. You married up. I know I did, Ballard. Where is the real book? In a saddlebag 10 feet from me. Then I will come down off this roof and I will take it from you. You will try. Yes, I will try. And Ballard from the smokehouse roof stood up. He was smaller than Adelaide had pictured. Smaller than the size of him, and Cole's voice for 2 days had made her think he would be. A narrow man, wiry, 40 years old, gray at the temples, a face that had been handsome once and now was only hard. He stood on the smokehouse roof with the forged ledger in one hand and a long rifle in the other, and he looked down at Cole Hartley in the yard, and he said, "Cole, before we do this, one question. Ask it. Who killed Tom Calloway?" Cole's hand on the revolver went white at the knuckles. Tom Calloway. The name Adelaide had not been told. The name she had guessed at through 2 days and had not asked. You did, Ballard. I pulled the trigger, Cole. I did not pay the shooter. Ashcroft paid. Ashcroft paid Cole and I pulled the trigger, and I have thought about it every day for 3 years and 6 months, and I am going to tell you something now, and I want you to hear me. I'm listening. I did not know he had a boy. Silence. I did not know Cole. I did not know Tom Calloway had a wife. I did not know he had a boy aged 4. Ashcroft did not tell me. He told me Calloway was a crooked Pinkerton skimming his operations. He told me Calloway had sold him out to Federals. He told me Calloway was a dead man walking, and the only question was which dog got to put him down. And he paid me, Cole, and I went into that hotel room and I put 2 through the man's throat, and I went out the back stairs, and I did not learn until 6 months later, when I saw the widow in Chicago on a streetcar with the boy that Tom Calloway had been telling the truth, and Ashcroft had been buying my gun to cover his own thieving. Cole Hartley had stopped breathing. Cole? Ballard. Cole, I have been a dog on Ashcroft's chain for 11 years, and I have done things for him that will keep me out of heaven, and the one thing I have never been able to forgive him for is that boy. And 2 days ago, your wife rides into Red Fork carrying a book that will hang Victor Ashcroft from a federal gallows in Manhattan, and he sends me west to take it off her, and I got on that train in St. Louis, Cole. And I rode 3 days, and I sat on your smokehouse roof for 40 minutes, waiting for you to come over that rise, and I am going to tell you now what I have been deciding on since Sedalia. Cole said nothing. From the smokehouse roof, Ballard said, I am not going to shoot you, Cole Hartley, and I am not going to shoot your wife, and I am not going to take her book back to New York. I am coming down off this roof with my hands in the air, and I am going to ride east with Sam Reed to a federal courtroom in Chicago. And I am going to swear out the biggest damn statement the United States Attorney has ever put to paper, and I am going to put Victor Ashcroft on the rope myself, because the one coin left in my pocket that is worth anything is Tom Calloway's boy. He dropped the rifle off the roof. It hit the dirt. He raised both hands. It took Cole Hartley a long moment to stand up from behind the water trough. When he did, he walked across the yard with the revolver still in his hand, but pointed at the dirt, and he stopped 10 feet from the smokehouse, and he looked up at the man who had put 2 bullets through his partner's throat in a St. Louis hotel room in the winter of 1883. Ballard. Cole, if you are lying to me, I am not lying to you, Cole. If you are lying to me, Ballard, there is no corner of this continent where I will not find you. I know it. Come down off the roof. He came down. Sam Reed took his pistol off him, and his knife off him, and the forged ledger out of his hand, and he put irons on Ballard's wrists, and Ballard did not resist. And the whole while, Ballard did not take his eyes off Cole Hartley. And the whole while, Cole did not take his eyes off Ballard, and Adelaide Pierce stood 10 feet from both of them, with the reins of the gray mare in her hand, and she understood for the first time in her 26 years on this earth what it looked like when a man forgave another man for the single thing he had sworn he would never forgive. Cole did not forgive him. Not yet. Not today. But he did not shoot him either. And on the porch of a ranch house 5 miles from a wagon road full of bought men in irons with a barn on fire behind them, and a Pinkerton and a bride and a repentant killer, all standing in the same yard that was as close to mercy as the state of Texas was going to get before noon. They put the fire out. It took them an hour. The barn was half gone, and the hay was a loss, but the main beams had held, and the horses had been in the north pasture, and by the time the smoke thinned, Adelaide Pierce was sitting on the kitchen step with soot on her face, and her mother's braid half come down, and Cole Hartley sat down next to her without asking permission and put a tin cup of water in her hand. "Drink, Cole." "Drink, ma'am." She drank. He looked at her hands. "Adelaide." "Yes." "Your wrist." She looked down. The old scar, the one she had split open on the wagon road outside the stagecoach 2 days ago, had opened again. Blood had soaked the cuff of the shirt to the elbow. She had not felt it. "It's nothing." "It is not nothing, Mrs. Hartley." "Cole, give me your hand." She gave him her hand. He unbuttoned the cuff. He rolled the sleeve back. He looked at the scar and the fresh wound through it, and he looked at the way the old scar ran a clean line deliberate 2 inches above the pulse, and his mouth went tight and did not move for a long moment. "Adelaide." "Cole, this scar is not from a nail." "No, Cole. This scar is old." "Yes." "How old?" 9 years. Silence. "Who," Cole Hartley said very carefully, "gave it to you?" Adelaide Pierce looked at the smoke still rising from the barn. She looked at Sam Reed across the yard, putting Ballard up onto a horse in irons. She looked at her husband of 2 days, who was kneeling in the dirt beside her, with her bloodied wrist in his 2 hands, and she said the thing she had not said to any living person in 9 years. "Victor Ashcroft," she said. Cole did not move. "I was 17, Cole. He was 34. He was my father's partner, and he had been coming to the house for supper since I was a child. One evening in September, he followed me into my father's library, and he closed the door, and he told me that he had spoken to my father, and that I would be his wife by Christmas, and that there was no sense in discussing it. And when I told him there was every sense in discussing it, Cole, he took me by the wrist, and when I would not say yes, he took a letter opener off my father's desk, and he said that he had bought me ledger and all, and he wanted a mark on me, so that every time I looked at my own wrist, I would remember whose name was on the paper." Cole's hands around her wrist were perfectly still. "My father came home an hour later and found me in the library with the door locked and blood on the carpet. My father, Cole, who I had never seen weep, not at my mother's funeral, not at anything, sat down on that carpet and wept into my lap. And then he stood up, and he did not speak of it again. And for 9 years, Cole, I believed that my father had done nothing, that he had eaten at Victor Ashcroft's table and signed Victor Ashcroft's papers and closed Victor Ashcroft's deals and done nothing. Adelaide. But he did not do nothing, Cole. He kept the ledger. For 9 years he kept the ledger. Every dollar, every name, every payment. He wrote it down in his own hand, and he kept it in a safe in his office. And on the night Victor Ashcroft came to the house to kill him, my father took that ledger out of the safe, and he put it in my hands. And the last thing he said to me, Cole, before he pushed me out the back stairs was—" She could not finish. Cole very gently said, "What did he say, Adelaide?" "He said, 'Tell the man in Texas it was always for you, Addie. Tell him it was always for you.'" Cole Hartley closed his eyes. He lifted her wrist, bloody sleeve and all, and he pressed his forehead against the old scar for a long moment, and he did not speak. And when he lifted his head, Adelaide saw that his face was wet, and he did not try to hide it. "Mrs. Hartley." "Yes." "I am going to bind this wrist." "All right. And then you and I and Sam and Ballard and Earl Halliday and every ranch hand on this place are going to ride into Red Fork, and we are going to put 11 men in front of Justice Fletcher before supper, and we are going to cable Chicago tonight. All right? And then tomorrow, Mrs. Hartley, you and I are going to sit down in this kitchen with a fresh sheet of paper, and we are going to write a letter to Mr. Victor Ashcroft in New York." "A letter?" "A letter, ma'am, signed by both of us. And we are going to tell him in plain words that he is welcome to come to Texas and collect his bride and his ledger any time he pleases. And that my wife and I will be sitting on the porch of this ranch waiting for him with a federal warrant in one hand and a loaded rifle in the other. And that the next time Victor Ashcroft puts a mark on Adelaide Pierce's wrist, it will be over my dead body, and mine will not be the only body in the room." Adelaide Pierce, who had not wept since her mother's funeral at age 9, wept. She wept into Cole Hartley's shoulder for a full minute, and Cole did not speak. And at the end of it, she drew a long breath, and she wiped her face with her unbloodied sleeve, and she said, "Cole Hartley." "Yes, Mrs. Hartley." "When we are done with Victor Ashcroft." "Yes." "I would like to sleep across the hall from you no longer." A pause. "No, ma'am?" "No. No, Mrs. Hartley. When we are done with Victor Ashcroft, you will not sleep across the hall from me, because when we are done with Victor Ashcroft, I will have earned the right to ask you a question I have not yet earned the right to ask, and when I ask it, you will answer it the way you mean to answer it, and not a day sooner." Adelaide Pierce put her forehead against her husband's shoulder. "Cole." "Yes." "You are a harder man to be married to than I expected." "Ma'am, I have been told." Sam Reed from the yard said, "Cole, we're burning daylight." Cole Hartley stood up. He pulled Adelaide up with him. And the 10 of them, a rancher, a bride, a Pinkerton, a reformed killer, a telegraph clerk, and 5 ranch hands, rode out of that scorched yard toward the town of Red Fork. And they did not look back at the smoke, and they did not speak of what lay ahead. And somewhere east of them, on a train that had crossed the Mississippi at dawn, Victor Ashcroft was already in the state of Texas. Justice Fletcher was 83 years old, and he was eating a soft-boiled egg when 11 riders pulled up in front of his house at 10:15 in the morning, and when he opened his door with his napkin still tucked into his collar and saw Cole Hartley on his porch with a judge of the state of Texas in irons behind him, he set the napkin down on the rail, and he said, "Well, I did wonder when this day was coming. Your Honor." "Cole, I need a warrant." "I expect you do. I need 11 of them." "Son." Justice Fletcher took the napkin off his collar. "You better come inside." They went inside. Adelaide Pierce sat at the justice's kitchen table in Cole's shirt, with her wrist freshly wrapped in clean linen, and she opened the ledger, and for 2 hours she did not stop talking. She named the names. She spoke the dates. She read the columns. Justice Fletcher, who had a hand that shook badly, and a mind that did not shake at all, wrote every word of it down in a copybook with a steel nib. And when she was done, he put the pen down, and he looked at her across the table, and he said, "Mrs. Hartley." "Yes, Your Honor." "I have sat on a bench in this territory for 31 years. "Yes, Your Honor." "And in all that time, I have not seen paper like this." "No, Your Honor." "You wrote this." "I wrote every line of it from the age of 16. Justice Fletcher closed the copybook. He signed 11 warrants in a hand that no longer shook. He signed a 12th sealed separately, which he laid aside and did not speak of. "Cole." "Yes, Your Honor." "You ride to the county line tonight?" "Yes." "You expect Ashcroft's men?" "I expect Ashcroft himself." Justice Fletcher looked at him a long moment. "Then you take this 12th warrant, son, and you put his name on it when he gets off that train, and you bring him into my courtroom yourself, and I will hold him without bond until the federal marshals come up from Austin to take him off my hands. Will you do that?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Mrs. Hartley." "Yes, Your Honor. Will you do that?" Adelaide Pierce looked at the old man across the table, and she thought of her father weeping on a library carpet 9 years ago, and she said, "Yes, Your Honor, I will do that." They rode out of his yard at noon. By 2 o'clock, Sam Reed was on the telegraph key himself, with Earl Halliday standing over his shoulder, and the cables went out in every direction. Chicago, Austin, Washington. The United States Attorney in the Southern District of New York, a man named Kincaid, whom Cole Hartley had known for 9 years and had not spoken to in 3. By 4 o'clock, a reply had come back from Chicago. By 5, a reply had come back from Austin. By 6, the Attorney General of the state of Texas had wired in his own hand 5 words: "Hold every man you have. Stop." And by 7 o'clock that evening, on the porch of a boarding house in Red Fork, where Adelaide Pierce had never set foot before, Cole Hartley handed his wife a folded paper and said, "Ma'am, this came for you." She opened it. It was a cable from Mrs. Martha Calloway of Chicago, Illinois. "Mrs. Hartley, Sam has wired. I have wept 3 hours. My boy is asleep. Whatever you require of me in any courtroom in this country, I will do it. Tell your husband I forgive him for staying away. Tell him Tommy asks after him. Tell him to come home when this is finished. Tell him we are waiting. M.C. Adelaide." Pierce folded the paper. She did not give it back. She tucked it inside the front cover of her father's ledger, next to her father's last line, and she said, "Cole, yes, your partner's widow has forgiven you." "I know she has, ma'am. She has been waiting for you 3 years. Yes? You will go to Chicago when this is finished." "Yes, ma'am. I will go with you." He looked at her. "Mrs. Hartley, I will go with you, Cole Hartley, because a debt to a dead man is the only kind of debt that ever compounds interest, and I have not married a man who pays his debts alone. Cole Hartley." On a boarding house porch in Red Fork, Texas, at 7 o'clock in the evening of the second day of his marriage, took his wife's hand and put it against his mouth and held it there for a long moment without speaking. Then he said, "Come on, Mrs. Hartley. We have a train to meet." The 8:15 from St. Louis rolled into the Red Fork station at 8:22, 6 minutes late, and Victor Ashcroft stepped off it in a black overcoat, with a silver-headed cane in one hand and a leather portfolio in the other. And he did not see at first the woman standing under the gaslight at the end of the platform. He saw the porter. He tipped the porter a coin. He asked the porter where a gentleman might find a clean hotel. The porter said, "Sir, there's a lady wants a word." Victor Ashcroft turned, and Adelaide Pierce in a plain gray traveling dress, and her mother's braid down her back and a wrist bound in linen, and a ledger against her hip, stepped forward into the light. He did not speak for a long moment. Then he said very quietly, "Adelaide." "Victor, you are a long way from home." "I am home, Victor." A muscle moved in his face. "I have come," he said, "to collect what is mine." "You have come, Victor, to be arrested." He laughed. It was not a surprised laugh. It was a thin one, almost sad, the laugh of a man who had rehearsed this conversation on a train for 3 days and was finding the real version disappointing. "Child, you do not know what you are doing." "I am 26 years old, Victor. I am not a child. I stopped being a child in a library in September of '77, and you were the reason." He flinched. She did not. "Adelaide, listen to me. Whatever your father told you." "My father told me nothing, Victor. My father spent 9 years writing a ledger, and he gave it to me on the last night of his life, and I have read every line of it, and I know every dollar you have stolen, and every man you have bought, and every judge you have paid, and every widow you have made. And I am telling you now, in the hearing of the 2 United States Deputy Marshals standing behind you on this platform, that you are going to a cell tonight, and you are going to Austin tomorrow, and you are going to New York by the end of the month, and you are going to a federal gallows before the year is out." Victor Ashcroft turned his head. The 2 deputy marshals in plain coats were standing 10 feet behind him. They had been on the train with him since Kansas City. He had not known. He turned back. "Adelaide. Victor. My dear." "Victor." Her voice did not rise. You put a letter opener through my wrist when I was 17 years old. You have sat at my father's table and smiled at me for 9 years afterward. You killed my father 3 nights ago in his own parlor. You forged a warrant against me. You bribed a judge in this county to put me in a cell. You paid a woman in this town to swear false witness against me. You sent a man to burn my husband's barn this morning. You have come to this station tonight to collect me as if I were a parcel." She lifted the ledger. "This is every line of it, Victor. In my father's hand and in mine. This is 9 years of columns, and I am going to read it in a federal courtroom, and the jury is going to believe me, because I am the woman who wrote it, and you are the man who paid for it. And when they ask me on the witness stand why I did not come forward sooner, Victor, I am going to roll back the cuff of my sleeve, and I am going to show them the scar you gave me, and I am going to tell them in plain English exactly why a 17-year-old girl did not walk into a New York precinct in the autumn of 1877. And every juror in that room is going to understand." Victor Ashcroft's cane slipped slightly in his hand. Behind him, Cole Hartley stepped out of the shadow of the station house with the 12th warrant in his hand and a revolver on his hip he had not drawn. "Mr. Ashcroft." Hartley. Victor Ashcroft, by warrant of Justice Elias Fletcher, of the County of Red Fork, State of Texas, and under the authority of a federal complaint, signed this afternoon by the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York. You are under arrest on charges of conspiracy, bribery, murder for hire, forgery of federal documents, and obstruction of a United States Marshal. Put your hands on the rail, sir." Victor Ashcroft did not put his hands on the rail. He looked at Adelaide. He looked at the ledger. And for the first time in all the years she had known him, she saw the thing in his face that she had been waiting 9 years to see. And it was not rage, and it was not contempt, and it was not even fear. It was the look of a man who had come finally to understand that he had lost. "Adelaide." "Victor, you were always the smartest person in that house." "I know I was." "Your father knew too." "I know he did." He put his hands on the rail. Cole Hartley put the irons on him himself. The trial in Austin took 4 weeks. The trial in New York took 11. Adelaide Pierce testified in both of them in the same gray traveling dress and her mother's braid. And on the 3rd day in New York, when the defense attorney asked her, in a voice meant to shame her, why she had not come forward in the autumn of 1877, she rolled back the cuff of her left sleeve in front of a courtroom of 92 people and a jury of 12 men, and she said, "Because I was 17 years old, sir, and this is what he did to me when I said no, and my father had not yet taught me that a woman with a column can do more damage than a woman with a voice. I learned it since. I am here now." The jury was out 94 minutes. Victor Ashcroft went to a federal penitentiary on the 11th of October, 1886, and he died there of a fever in the spring of the following year. And Adelaide Pierce, when she was told, did not smile and did not weep, only folded the cable in half and put it in the stove. Judge Harlan of Red Fork County resigned his bench from a jail cell. He served 7 years. Commissioner Lamarck of Austin served 11. Sheriff Finney of Wichita County hanged himself in his office on the morning the warrant arrived, which spared the state of Texas a trial. Vera Halliday testified against all of them in exchange for a suspended sentence and the loss of her telegraph office, and the first thing she did when she left the courtroom in Austin was walk 3 blocks to the boarding house where Adelaide Pierce was staying, and she knocked on the door, and when Adelaide opened it, Vera Halliday stood on the step with her hat in her hands, and she said, "Mrs. Hartley." "Mrs. Halliday." "I called you a silk dress with blood on it." "I remember, Mrs. Halliday." "Ma'am, I do not ask you to forgive me. I only ask you to know that I have lain awake every night since, and I will lie awake every night to come, and I am sorry." Adelaide Pierce looked at the older woman for a long moment. "Mrs. Halliday?" "Yes, ma'am. I have been a silk dress in the mud, and I have been a ledger in a kitchen, and I have been a witness on a stand, and I am not any of those things anymore. I am the wife of Cole Hartley, and I have work ahead of me, and I do not have time to hate you. Go home, Mrs. Halliday. Live better. That is all I ask." Vera Halliday went home. She lived better. Dad. The money came in a federal draft in February of 1887. The recovered assets of the Ashcroft and Delane banking house seized by order of the Southern District of New York and distributed under the supervision of a court-appointed trustee in amounts determined by a ledger entered into evidence as People's Exhibit 17, a black leather book in the hand of Abner Pierce and his daughter Adelaide, and the largest single payment by order of Adelaide Hartley, née Pierce herself, went to a Mrs. Martha Calloway of Chicago, Illinois widow, with one son aged 7, and it was enough to put the boy through any school in the country, and his mother in a house of her own, and leave over besides. Adelaide wrote the letter that went with the draft in her own hand. Mrs. Calloway, this money was stolen from good men and honest widows by the man who killed your husband. It is yours by right. My husband and I have taken nothing from it for ourselves. We will come to Chicago in the spring as we promised. Please tell Tommy that my husband is bringing him a horse, A.H. Samuel Reed rejoined the Chicago office of the Pinkerton National Detective Agency in the autumn of 1886 and rose to the rank his late mentor had once held. Earl Halliday sold the telegraph office and moved his wife to a small house outside Waco, where the nearest wire was 11 miles away. The man named Ballard pleaded guilty on 4 counts and testified on 7 more, and the judge in Manhattan, in consideration of the service he had rendered, sentenced him to 15 years and not the rope. Ballard served 11 and was paroled. He died in 1898 of consumption in a boarding house in Denver, and Cole Hartley, who was not a man given to sentiment, paid for the stone. And in Red Fork, Texas, in the spring of 1887, a woman in a gray dress and a braid down her back walked out onto the porch of a ranch house at 6 in the evening with 2 tin cups of coffee, and she gave one of them to the man sitting on the top step with his hat pushed back on his head, and she sat down next to him, and she said, "Cole." "Mrs. Hartley, the barn is rebuilt." "It is. The federal draft cleared this morning." "I know it did. The last of it is settled, Cole." He set his coffee down. He turned toward her. He took off his hat, and he set it on the step beside him, and he looked at Adelaide Pierce Hartley in the last of the evening light, and he said, "Mrs. Hartley." "Yes, Cole. I told you once there would come a day I had earned the right to ask you a question. I remember. I am asking you now. Ask me, Cole." "Adelaide." He took a breath. "I married a woman I had never met. I married her because her father had the sense to send her to my door, and because I needed somebody in my kitchen, and because I was tired. I did not love you when I lifted you out of the mud in the wagon road. I did not love you when I closed your door on the first night. I am not going to lie to you about that, because I have not lied to you once, and I do not intend to start." He paused. "But somewhere in the hours between a stagecoach and a federal courtroom, Mrs. Hartley, I became a man who cannot remember what it was like to live in this house without you in it, and I do not know when it happened, and I do not know the hour, and I do not care, because it is done now and it will not be undone. And what I am asking you, ma'am, is whether you will let me be your husband, not by letter, not by forgery, not by court order, by choice, by yours." Adelaide Pierce Hartley set her cup down on the step. She took her husband's hand. She looked him full in the face. "Cole Hartley." "Yes, Adelaide. I answered that question the night you pressed your forehead against my wrist in this yard and wept for what a man had done to me when I was 17. I answered it the day you handed me a ledger at a federal courtroom and let me read the columns in my own voice. I answered it an hour ago when I walked out of this kitchen with 2 cups of coffee and knew which step you would be sitting on. I have been answering it for a year, Mr. Hartley, and you have been too stubborn to hear me." "Ma'am." "Yes, Cole." A long moment. "Yes. Yes, you fool. Yes. It has always been yes. It was yes the night I lay awake in a borrowed shirt with a pearl-handled pistol in my lap. It was yes the morning you shot a judge off a horse and did not ask my leave. It was yes on a Manhattan witness stand, when I rolled back my sleeve, and I thought of you, Cole Hartley, sitting in the 3rd row behind the prosecutor, with your hat on your knee, and I said the word husband in that courtroom, and I meant it. It is yes now. It will be yes tomorrow. I did not come west to run from a banker, Cole. I came west to find you. I did not know it on the stagecoach. I have known it every day since. Yes. Cole Hartley took her face in both his hands. He did not say anything. He did not need to. And on the porch of a ranch house 7 miles west of Red Fork, Texas in the spring of 1887, a woman who had once been called a silk dress in the mud sat beside a man who had once been called a Pinkerton with a dead partner's name in his head, and they drank their coffee while the light went out of the sky, and neither of them said another word, because there was not another word that needed saying. Adelaide Pierce had crossed a continent with her father's blood on her hands and a ledger against her ribs and a scar no one was supposed to see, and she had walked into a Texas mud road on a day in May, and she had met a silent cowboy who did not ask her name, and together they had pulled a New York banker off his throne and burned his empire to ash and put his dogs in irons and paid his debts to every widow he had made. They had built a house out of a forged letter and a fire and a federal draft and a pair of open doors across a hallway, and in the end, the house had held. She had not come west to be saved. She had come west to settle a ledger, and Adelaide Pierce Hartley of Red Fork, Texas, in the only handwriting that had ever mattered to her, had closed every column.